The Imperial Army to some dragons is like a second family, kin brought together under arms, so it's not hard to understand that the Imperial Army might develop its own military culture, its own unique internal way of life, and trendy behaviour. Hi, I'm your host Heatwave, and in today's lore episode, I'll be exploring the military culture of the Imperial Army. I fear no evil, I fear no death, for faith in the throne is my shield, and my hatred be my fuel, and duty my purpose. Welcome back to the Wings of Fire spin-off series Empire of Pareena. If you haven't done so already, please leave a like, and if you haven't done so already, please subscribe so you don't miss any episodes that I publish. In this lore episode, I'll be exploring the diverse culture of the Imperial Army, how it influences the outlook of its soldiers, how inductii show personality in a rigid and strict military code, and what are some of the trends among these inductii. If we look past the bombs, lasers, and bayonets of the Imperial Army, we can see a diverse, closely kept community and culture. The Imperial Army is embedded into common dragon culture. It's, of course, one of the founding principles, uphold the sword, and in tow, the wider Imperial culture has rubbed off on the Imperial Army, a melting pot of different cultures and customs from across Pareena. Because the Imperial Army makes every dragon equal, it doesn't matter if they were once a performer, a farmer, a mailman, or an athlete. The Imperial Army makes every dragon the same. It teaches its inductii to bond with their kin at arms, no matter their background, gender, age, or intelligence. Upholding the sword is a big part of Imperial Army military culture. It is a way for inductii to understand what and why they serve their kin and throne. It acts as a bridge between soldier and civilian. Each inductii, past and present, is said to be upholding the sword, and thus are held in very high regard by the wider population of the Empire. To disgrace the sword, to be a coward, to be selfish, disobedient, dishonourable, is a disgrace to the very teachings of the Imperial Army, and all those who have served the throne. This is not taken lightly by inductii, who hate any dragon who tarnishes and wastes the opportunity of the Imperial Army. Now, while the Imperial Army has its own military police force, they're only there to help with traffic control. Culturally, every inductii is expected to follow not only a military code, but also imperial law, meaning that the military police or military enforcers don't spend their time dishing out punishment to inductii. Now, one of the very earliest examples of military culture comes from Ocean's loyalists. As a point of pride, loyalty, and a way of identifying themselves on a battlefield, the soldiers of Ocean's loyalists wore vast amounts of seashells, even if the dragon weren't a sea wing. While its use was more practical, it was still an accepted practice by the loyalists, something that every loyalist ended up doing. And that leads us up to our topic of trends and individuality among inductii. While the Imperial Army puts all dragons on an equal level, it does encourage its soldiers to show a lot of personality and individuality through their armor and equipment decorations. This uplifts an inductii's morale, creating a sense of pride and community among soldiers, and reminds them of the real reason they fight. Typically, most inductii will carry some sort of amulet or pendant. It can be made out of gold, steel, wood, in fact any material that could be forged with. These pendants take many forms, and serve alongside typical jewelry worn by dragons and inductii. These pendants can look like dragons themselves, dragon wings, animal teeth, crescent moons, fruit, sea life, even the sun. These pendants can be attached anywhere, from weapons to belts to just around limbs. But this is small compared to how much inductii choose to wear honor scrolls and parchments. These rolls of paper document the deeds of past inductii, but can also contain reminders of battle tactics or reminders of home. Some inductii even write poems onto their paper. Of course, over time the scrolls will deteriorate. Most honor scrolls are tied off around the forelimbs or nailed to the chest armor. Another item of significance to inductii are the carrying of bones and skulls of the deceased kin. While this isn't a practice limited to the Imperial Army, they still believe it's an important part of their kit to carry the bodies of those who have passed on, believing that they still watch over them from the 3 moons above. These small items are culturally significant to the Imperial Army because it reminds the inductii of who they are, where they came from, their kin, their home, their duty, and responsibility. But there are more forms of decoration that inductii apply to their war gear and equipment. Many inductii will paint markings onto their equipment. This could be in the form of naming tanks like the No Hope in Hadley, or they could paint symbols or slogans of where the inductii came from. Like if they came from Claw Mountain, for example, they may paint the picture of a mountain onto their armor. One marking that is reserved are crimson stripes. Typically only officers and specialists can wear colours on their battle gear, but some inductii with a veteran status paint crimson bands on their right forelimb plate. This represents a bloody talon, a talon that is seen in combat. Many inductii regard veterans very highly for their knowledge and experience in battle. Typically, an inductii is only classified as a veteran after he has seen a significant amount of battle. This could be either over a number of years, or this could be over a number of consistent battles. Some units even have created their own unique markings specific to that unit. For example, the 91st Rifle Company, which is better known as the Featherheads, because these inductii wear long feathers. In fact, they wear peacock feathers on their helmets to denote them in the field of battle. It may seem odd for soldiers to be wearing equipment that makes them stand out on the battlefield, but remember, the inductii are more than mere soldiers and grunts. They are knights, honoured and proud of their duty. Now, culturally, how does the Imperial Army handle relationships? Unfortunately, they do not openly allow romantic relationships within the Imperial Army and among its soldiers, as it is seen as a conflict of interest. This is not the right setting for those kinds of relationships, of course. But this doesn't stop inductii from having relationships outside of the military. In fact, it's actually encouraged. Family and kin offer a unique motivation for a soldier to fight on. During the War of the Red Sands, one very obvious part of the Imperial Army military culture is the inductii's obsession with collecting things. I've stated many times before how the inductii will collect captured weapons, especially Soviet-issued sidearms. While these sidearms were used as weapons alongside the inductii's standard-issue equipment, they were seen as a prize trophy collected by soldiers. This was a common practice by inductii, collecting trophies from war. Other than enemy weapons, most inductii collected small trinkets from the enemy, religious symbols like the wolf head, the Soviet pendant, or sometimes books and small items carried by Red Army soldiers. One item sought after by a lot of inductii are the strange and funny hats the Groznyans wear. You may think there is no point in collecting hats, but each of these little hats has a little red star pin, and in this pin is gold, free gold. Why not collect it and melt it down? The Groznyans also wear those nifty shoulder boards on their uniforms. They also contain a small gold pin. So, Those inductii who noticed this were sure to collect as many of these as they could. Of course, some inductii chose to collect more personal effects of the enemy. Some chose to collect skulls of the Groznians, along with ears, jaws, and paws, as kill trophies. But on a more positive note, a tradition of the Imperial Army is that before each operation the inductii involved were gifted a massive and illustrious feast before battle. This feast is used to boost the morale of inductii by gifting them with food not typically issued in Imperial Army ration packets. These are things like cakes, ice cream, milk, tropical whole fruits, exotic meats, rare poultry, honey, and chocolate. All this food will be set up by the Line Battalion's mess section, but feeding 2,000 inductii is not an easy task. And that concludes another lore episode of this Wings of Fire spin-off series, Empire of Pareena. I've been your host, Heatwave, signing off.